I'm Gary Eichten, and joining me on stage here at Anoka Ramsey are Republican incumbent Chip Cravaack and his Democratic challenger Rick Nolan. Chip Cravaack is from North Branch. He's seeking his second term in the U.S. House. Rick Nolan is from Crosby. He is a former congressman, having served 3 terms in Congress back in the 70s. Our debate is sponsored by Debate Minnesota, a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization dedicated to fostering informed, in-depth discussion of the major issues of the day. Its board and supporters come from different backgrounds and political persuasions, but they all share an interest in promoting civility in our political discourse. A few ground rules. We'll be here for an hour. We'll begin and end the debate with 1-minute opening and closing statements. The candidates just tossed a coin to determine the order. In this first segment, they'll each have 2 minutes to answer each question, with each getting a 1-minute follow-up. In our second segment, we'll include some questions from the audience. And by the way, one reminder for those of you here in the audience, please, no cheers or jeers during the debate, and no applause until the end of the debate. And those of you watching online on the uptake, you can join us on Twitter at #DebateMN. Well, gentlemen, thanks for joining us, and let's begin with opening statements. Rick Nolan, you go first.
Good afternoon. I want to thank Debate Minnesota, NPR, Gary Eichten, Congressman Chip Cravaack for the opportunity to visit with you about the important issues in this election contest. I'm a 4th-generation Iron Ranger. My family has lived in the 8th Congressional District for 6 generations. I've built my business here in the 8th. I have raised my family. I've held elective office, and I have been involved in a wide range of volunteer community services here in the 8th District. And not that there's any legal requirement that someone do those things, but it certainly helps and is a big advantage. Make no mistake about it, the country's in trouble. The deficits, the wars, the joblessness, the growing inequalities in our system are unsustainable, and they threaten the future of our country. The way forward is what this election contest is all about. I think in the course of this debate, you will find that there's a rather dramatic difference between the way forward that Congressman Cravaack would suggest and the way that I would go. Thank you very much.
That's Rick Nolan, and now Chip Cravaack.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Thanks for Debate Minnesota for sponsoring us here. Also, Cambridge Community College. Great to be here. You know, it's truly been a privilege and an honor to serve the last 2 years as your representative. In the last 2 years, I think we've had rather pro-growth, pro-job legislation that has been specific to the 8th District. For example, our Buy American Steel Amendment, making sure that American steel is on American projects using American workers. A transportation bill after 9 extensions, focusing on roads and our badly needed bridges. An FAA bill after 23 extensions, getting us to the next generation of aviation. Right now, we have many challenges in front of us. And in the next couple months, there's going to be very critical votes that we are going to have to get through. But I believe in maintaining the core principles of what made this country great. Making sure that we have pro-growth tax reform. Making sure that we start eliminating the excessive amount of regulations that are on our small businesses. I look forward to discussing these events. I look forward for a positive, open, and issue-oriented debate. Thank you.
Okay. Opening statements from both of the candidates, and let's get to some questions. And why don't we start with the much-discussed fiscal cliff? Gentlemen, after the election, Congress is going to have to decide what to do about the fiscal cliff, whether to allow steep spending cuts, sharp tax increases to take effect as scheduled, or come up with some alternatives to try to reduce the deficit. The question would be, what should Congress and the President do? Rick Nolan, you start.
Well, first of all, my first term of service in the Congress of the United States, we worked 48 out of 52 weeks, and most of those days were 4- and 5-day weeks. The current Congress has worked, I believe, about 32 out of the 52 weeks, and most of those days most of those weeks are 1 to 2 days. First of all, I think the Congress needs to go to work and write a budget. Get the country moving forward instead of abdicating its responsibility and putting us in this fiscal cliff position. But in the event that the Congress doesn't go back to work, I quite frankly would welcome the opportunity to make the kind of decisions that we need to resolve our fiscal crises. I believe we need to put an end to the nation building abroad, start rebuilding America. I think we need to end the Bush tax cuts that enable the rich to get away with not paying their fair share of the taxes. I think we need to protect Medicare, Social Security, and I have no doubt whatsoever that we can solve this fiscal crisis, and we can solve it in a way that puts America back on track. Congressman Cravaack has repeatedly voted for the Ryan budget, which is essentially a plan to rebuild America from the top down. That's what got us into trouble in this country. In my judgment, we need to rebuild America from the middle out. And that's how you create jobs. That's how you create opportunities. That's how you restore the hope. That's how you restore the dream. That's how you get America back on track. And that's what this election contest is all about, the direction that we're going to take. And that, in no small part, is going to be determined by how we respond to this fiscal cliff, this fiscal crisis that we're facing as a nation. Thank you.
Chip Cravaack.
One of the things that we have done in the U.S. House side is passed a budget. Sounds like a concept, but the Senate hasn't passed a budget. The last time the Senate passed a budget was before this was even invented. That's how long it's been. It's been over 1,200 days since the Senate has passed a budget. We have passed a budget on the House side. It's a pro-growth, pro-tax, pro-job budget. We have 38 bills that are sitting on the Senate side waiting for Senate action. Senator Reid has not taken these bills up. These are pro-growth jobs bills. They affect everything from our timber industry to our paper industry to our mining industry as well. We have pro-growth tax reforms. And Congressman, all due respect, and you're talking about going to work, in your previous Congressman, in the last years you were in Congress, you missed 1/3 of your votes. In the year prior to that, you missed 1/4 of your votes. So we believe that we have, and what Congressman Nolan calls his vacation, we call constituent work week. We've done 29 town halls throughout the 8th District. We've done 17 teletown halls, which has been a new technology here in the 8th District. We've developed a brand new type of concept within the 8th District called mobile offices, where we've had over 300 mobile offices in the 8th District. We've also had 2 very successful jobs fairs. In addition to that, we've had mayors' roundtables, inviting over 200 mayors and getting ideas to take back to Washington, D.C. so that we can have pro-growth job reform. You cannot berate the small business owner, which is the lifeblood of not only the 8th District but the nation. 7 out of 10 people are employed by small businesses, and then turn around and add more regulation on top of them. You have to instill confidence with a small business owner to create jobs, thereby creating jobs, creating revenue.
Gentlemen, you each get a minute here, but could I ask you each to use your minute to tell us specifically, would you go along with the budget cuts as they're currently proposed, deep spending cuts on the domestic side, deep spending cuts on the Pentagon side, or do something else? Rick Nolan?
No, I would not go along with the budget cuts as they are proposed. I would point out, though, that, however, that Congressman Cravaack, in voting for a budget plan, voted to extend tax cuts for billionaires and millionaires. He voted to extend tax cuts for companies to help facilitate moving their manufacturing offshore. He voted to expand military spending and nation building abroad while voting to cut funding for the rebuilding of here in America. And Chip, you can't go and cherry pick a moment in time with regard to someone's votes. I served in elective office for 10 years. We had a heck of a lot more votes than your Congress ever did. And I was always there for the important issues. I missed a few votes on the recording of the minutes and the naming of post offices. But when the critical issues were up, I was there. Thank you.
Okay, Chip Cravaack?
I did not vote for the Budget Control Act for the main reason because of sequestration, which is across-the-board cuts. We need to have a scalpel versus a meat axe in cutting our budget. So therefore, I did not vote for the Budget Control Act, which induces the sequestration, which is if we go into our it's going to be damaging to our military defense in regards to make us the smallest Navy we've had since 1915, the lowest amount of ground forces since 1940, and the smallest Air Force in existence. And Congressman, on all due respect again regarding your voting record, you actually missed votes for our disabled veterans giving them cost of living allowances. You voted 4 times to increase your own pay by almost 50%, and yet you didn't vote for COLA for our disabled veterans. Also, you missed 2 national NDAA, National Defense Authorization Acts, which is actually forms the basis of the grounds of making sure that we protect our troops and protect our nation.
Okay, just a reminder that let the candidates have their say. They're the ones on the stage. Did the federal stimulus plan accomplish its goal? Rick Nolan?
Yes, indeed it did. The country is back on track. It's not where we would like it to be. I think the stimulus package could have been better. But it did, in fact, create a lot of good jobs in a whole wide range of areas, not the least of which is in the field of transportation. The economy is not where it could be and where it should be, but the President of the United States inherited the worst situation since the Great Depression. We were losing 750,000 jobs a month, and now we're gaining anywhere from 100 to 200,000 jobs a month. So we're on the way to recovery. And if the president had a little more support and a little more help from the Republican Congress, several of whom said, for the first time in history, we are determined to make sure the president fails. We have always had a situation where the opposition party wanted to defeat the president in the next election, but we've never had a situation where they openly declared that they wanted the president to fail. We've always had a system where we rally behind our president, their president, and do everything we can to make sure that America succeeds. And that's what we need to do again, and it's been quite unfortunate. And as to the Congress's role in all this, there's always been conflict. There's always been partisan gridlock. But you know what? In the past, we didn't go home. We didn't quit. We stayed in session, and we rolled up our sleeves, and we duked it out, and we got things done. And that's what we need to do again in this country. Congress, every time it runs into an obstacle, they got to stop blaming the other party. They got to show a little bipartisanship, show an ability to roll up their sleeves and do some work together and get things done.
Okay, and my apologies. Chip Cravaack, you were supposed to go first on that question, so I'll catch up. But anyway, now, if you go ahead, please.
Right now, the stimulus bill provided $1.2 million in debt, $1 trillion in debt. And by every economist that I have read, did not help the economy. All we did was add more to our debt. Talking about the blame game, if you take a look at 2003 through 2008, during the reduced tax rates, actually $700 billion of increased revenue actually occurred during that time period. And you have to remember, Congressman, during the first 2 years of the Obama administration, there was a Democrat president, a Democrat House, and a Democratic Senate. Did the president inherit having a moratorium on our offshore oil drilling, while at the same time spending tens of billions of dollars giving to Mexico, giving to Colombia, giving to Brazil for their offshore drilling, and then turns around and tells them, we want to be your best customer? Did the president inherit Obamacare? And then taking $719 billion out of Medicare to pay for Obamacare? Did the president inherit having basically a war on coal that is going to increase our energy costs? The president actually come out and saying under his energy plan that energy costs will necessarily, and I quote, skyrocket. Did the president inherit the massive amount of $2.8 billion of increased taxes that are going to be placed on the American public and still be $6 trillion in debt? And oh, by the way, how many senators voted for the president's budget? 0. How many of the House voted for the president's budget? 0.
Rick Nolan?
Well, the fact is that the stimulus provided almost $450 billion in tax cuts, most of which went to the small business community. The stimulus bill provided several $100 billion in relief to states and to counties to help them balance their budgets so they didn't have to fire teachers and policemen and firemen. And it provided $170 billion in public works projects. I have several good friends. I'm a businessman. I've got friends in the business community, and they're working on rebuilding the airport up in Duluth. They're working on rebuilding roads and bridges throughout Minnesota's 8th District. And they're saying that as a result of the stimulus package, they're having some of their best years, and they're keeping their people working, and they're hiring new people. And it's been just a wonderful stimulus to their businesses and to our economy up here in the 8th District. Make no mistake about it. The stimulus package did a lot of good.
Chip Cravaack.
Again, this was $1.2 trillion of increased debt that by every economist that I read has maybe had a very small impact on the overarching economy. If you take a look, we've had 4 straight trillion-dollar deficits, 4 straight, adding to our increased $16 trillion in debt. And I know these are a lot of numbers that we're throwing around up here, but if you put it in perspective, $1 billion, if billion was a second, if a billion was a second and a trillion seconds ago, or a billion seconds ago, you were 31 years younger. A trillion seconds ago was right before the second ice age, 31,688 years. And we have $16 trillion that we are handing off to our children to pay for. We will make our children indentured servants. 46% of our debt is foreign owned. 30% of that is owned by China. The amount of interest that we pay China 1 week, they can purchase 3 Joint Strike Fighters and put 83 Tomahawk cruise missiles on their ships and their submarines.
Let's shift to health care issues, if we could, please. Should the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, be repealed, and if so, what should replace it? Chip Cravaack.
Yes, I think that we should repeal the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. The reason why, and let's just start off at the 30,000-foot level, nobody read it. It did not go through the normal committee process. It was brought down to the floor by Nancy Pelosi. 2 hours later, it was read. That was voted on. 2,700 pages with thousands of references associated with it. Right now, the bureaucrats are going through, they haven't even gotten through it yet. The bureaucrats are going halfway through Obamacare right now, and they've created another 30,000 pages of rules and regulations. Let's just start there. In addition to that, the Obamacare initiates the IPAB, the Independent Payment Advisory Board, which is an unaccountable, unelectable board that will be making decisions for our seniors and what type of payments they'll be received for their medical care. In essence, what's happening is that when our seniors that go to the doctor, you're going to have 15 people that will be deciding what type of health care you're going to get. Now, as doctors have told me before, and I've spoken to quite a few of these doctors, under Obamacare, they say you may have health insurance, but you may not have health care. The reason why is if you go into your doctor, your Medicare doctor, and you say, I need a hip operation. Well, the doctor may say, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to take what Obamacare is ready to give me, the IPAB. And you can say, well, I'll make up the difference, doc. It'll be illegal for you to do so. This is the IPAB. We believe to make sure that seniors have choices. And if you're 55 years and older for Medicare, nothing changes for you. If you're again, my dad's 81 years old. I'm not taking away his Medicare. I'm going to protect his Medicare. If you're 55 years and older, nothing changes. But for us younger generation, if we don't do something, we are going to have nothing because it goes bankrupt in 2022.
Rick Nolan?
No, I definitely would not vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act. It ensures that another 30 million people in this country would have health insurance. It provides that nobody can be denied as a result of preconditions. It provides that parents can keep their children insured up to the age of 26. The insurance industry has estimated that some of the processes for streamlining the payment procedures could save up to $750 billion a year. And among other things, it takes and puts in $716 billion in Medicare savings by cutting costs to some of the providers' fees and the health care fees, puts it right back into Medicare and extends Medicare for an estimated additional 8 years. Chip, the plan that you voted for takes the same $716 billion out of Medicare and uses it to pay for tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires. And as to the fact that you want to make sure that your dad gets his Medicare, I applaud you for that. But I don't know what kind of people you think we are, that we are such that we're just going to take care of ourselves and our immediate family. If Medicare was good enough for our parents, our grandparents, it's good enough for you and me, then it ought to be good enough for our children and for the future. Medicare is not an entitlement. It is an earned benefit that people started paying for the very first day that they ever went to work. They have every right to expect it, and I'm going to do everything in my power to protect it and make sure they get it. They're counting on it, they earned it, and they paid for it.
Chip Cravaack?
Well, this is something we'd agree on. I believe in protecting Medicare for those that are 55 years and older. But also, you have to remember, sir, Medicare trustees tell us that Medicare is bankrupt in 2022. Doing nothing is a dereliction of duty. And you have to remember when Obamacare was supposed to give everybody health insurance. It doesn't do that. 44 million people did not have insurance before Obamacare. Still, with Obamacare, 30 million people are not going to do it. There are some not have health care. There are some good dialogues that have come from this. You know, getting children that want to stay on their their parents' insurance to 26 years old, having pre-existing conditions, that has opened that discussion as well. And that is one of the. If anything positive has come from Obamacare, we have entered that discussion and making sure that we've seen that the American public want that, and they're going to get it. $716 billion. That is an absolute falsehood, sir. We went through all type of committee meetings, and the Sebelius finally had to admit that $716 billion was coming directly in Medicare, paying for Obamacare.
Rick Nolan?
A couple of things. I'm not sure where to begin. You say you believe in Medicare. But the fact is you voted to eliminate it, and as we know it, for the next generation. That's according to the Wall Street Journal and The Economist. You supported what you call a premium support. They call it a voucher system, regardless of whatever you want to call it. The old football player said, you can spin the game any way you want at the end of the game. But at the end of the day, the record is the record. And you voted to end Medicare as we know it. Secondly, that bill put $716 billion back into Medicare, extending the life of it. The National Institute of Health estimated in a study released here just about a month ago that there's $750 billion a year wasted in Medicare and medical care expenses. Chip, if you want to do something for the elderly, and for the youth who have to pay for the elderly, if you eliminate Medicare, then we need to, there's plenty we can do to fix it without doing away with it.
All right, let's follow up on this voucher premium support issue. And Chip Cravaack, I'm going to catch up here because I goofed up earlier, so we'll go first on this. Would moving to a voucher premium support program end Medicare as we know it?
There's been a lot of miscommunication regarding this voucher versus premium support. The program that I voted for is not a voucher program. It is a premium support program that is absolutely seamless to our seniors. And it gives our future seniors options. Remember, if you're 55 years and older, you don't have to raise your hands. Nothing changes for you. If you're 54 years and younger, something's got to change because, again, Medicare is bankrupt in 2022. It's bankrupt. We have to do something or else future generations will have absolutely nothing. And the $716 billion that the congressman is talking about here, it has gone through. It's when we're saying we're ending Medicare as we know it, is the PolitiFact lie of the year of 2011. That $716 billion is taken away from our seniors to pay for Obamacare. The voucher program and the new program that we propose, our future seniors are going to have choices. The second, the least, most expensive, is going to be full premium support level. If you don't like any of the choices that you have under this program, and admittedly, you are going to have choices. Under the IPAB, the Independent Payment Advisory Board, our seniors will not have choices. They will have mandates coming from the federal government. The federal government will be in charge of your health care instead of your doctor and you being in charge of your health care. If you don't like any of the proposals of the different plans that you're being offered, one of which is full premium support, guess what you have the option to do? Go on traditional Medicare. You have that option as well. This plan was worked on very closely with Paul Ryan and Alice Rivlin. Alice Rivlin was the chief of staff under the Clinton administration. This is her plan, in essence. This is the foundation is her plan. If we had actually done what Alice Rivlin told us to do under the Clinton administration, we probably wouldn't be in the situation we're in today. Paul Ryan and Alice Rivlin worked together on this.
Rick Nolan.
Well, first of all, it's not Alice Rivlin's plan. Alice Rivlin has made it unequivocally clear she does not support it. And again, Chip, you can call it whatever you want, but the fact checkers and what you're alleging here and the fact checkers here in Minnesota, NPR, WCCO, Star Tribune, KSTP, WCCO, they have all said that what you are saying and what you have said and your people have said in your ads is false, it's misleading, it's untruthful, it's nonsensical, it's ridiculous. And that is the fact, Chip. What you're saying to people is, here's a coupon, call it whatever you want. Good luck. We're turning you over to the private insurance sector. That's why we had to establish Medicare in the first place, because people went to the insurance industry and they could not afford medical care. So I'm going to do everything in my power to protect it, and you're right. There's some things that need to be done, Chip, to make sure that it's financially strong and viable in the future. And the first chance you got, you voted to take $716 billion out of it and use it to pay for tax cuts for the super rich in this country, for millionaires and for billionaires. We took under the Affordable Care Act and took $716 billion in excess payments out of that, put it right back into Medicare, and extended the life of Medicare for an additional 8 years. And that's what we need to do. You don't protect Medicare by doing away with it. You protect Medicare by strengthening it, taking out the excess, and taking out the wasteful spending that's occurring in there. Medicare has not contributed to the national debt crises that we're facing. It's an earned benefit. People work for it, they paid for it, they have every right to expect it, they're counting on it, and it's up to us to defend it and protect it.
Chip Cravaack.
Again, 2022 Medicare is insolvent. We have a plan. They don't. The president's plan is to do nothing. He did not even address the Medicare issue whatsoever. And under many debates, or in many committee meetings, Kathleen Sebelius finally had to admit it can't do both. The $716 billion. The $716 billion they say is going to go back into Medicare. It doesn't. It goes into Obamacare. She finally had to admit that in a committee meeting. The fact checkers tell us, they said it's the PolitiFact lie of the year of 2011 that Republicans are ending Medicare. We are saving Medicare. It is insolvent in 2020. To do nothing is a dereliction of duty as elected representative to the people of the 8th District of Minnesota. Because if in 2022 comes around, if we have no plan, as the president doesn't have a plan, the House Democrats don't have a plan, if we allow this to occur, that will directly affect austerity measures to our current seniors. I don't want that to happen.
Rick Nolan.
Well, as I pointed out here earlier, a recent study by the Institute of Medicine indicated there's $750 billion in healthcare waste in this country every year. That's $7 trillion over the next 10 years. I think $210 billion of it is excess administrative cost. I think $90 billion of it is overpayments. I think $75 billion of it is fraud. That's where we need to go, Congressman. Congressman. We need to clean this system up. That brings about savings for Medicare. It brings about savings for the American people, and that will extend the life of Medicare. You don't save it by doing away with it and turning it over to the insurance industry. That would be tragic. We need to step up and do what we need to fix it and protect it, and that's what we're doing.
Okay, shifting gears. Rick Nolan, you're first on this question. Are environmentalists hindering economic development in the 8th District?
No, I don't believe so. You're probably referring in particular to the whole mining issue. I've met with the mining companies. I've met with the steel workers, and I'm proud to say that they support my campaign. And they tell me, both the companies and the workers, that they don't have a problem with the regulations. They want healthy, safe working conditions. They want to see the air and the water and the lakes and the forest protected. What they do have a problem with is the permitting process. And clearly there are some things that we can do without abandoning the regulations that protect all the wonderful, great outdoors and resources that have kept many of us here and brought others of us here, without doing away with those regulations, as our congressman here has suggested. And at the end of the day, you don't get things done by holding hearings and putting out press releases and introducing bills that aren't going anywhere. You get things done by getting everybody in the room together, and you lock the door and you say, we're not going home until we get a solution. And that's what I've done all my life. I've done it in a bipartisan way. I have helped businesses in the 8th District overcome a wide variety of obstacles relating to regulations, and not by doing away with regulation, but on the contrary, by just expediting the process. Everybody that I know up in the 8th District is quite comfortable with the rules and the regulations, want to see them maintained. They just want to see the process expedited.
Okay, Chip Cravaack.
That's one of the reasons that we've had a lot of lifelong Democrats and miners, quite frankly, that are supporting our campaign and are very concerned about Congressman Nolan's record. For example, when Congressman was in office, he was one of the original 24 co-sponsors for the Boundary Water Canoe Area. He was actually in opposition of then Congressman Obastar, who wanted to make sure we still had logging opportunities, that we could have motorboating and also snowmobiling in the Boundary Water Canoe areas. Congressman Nolan sided essentially with the Twin City environmentalists and was actually in opposition of pro-growth, pro-economic reforms that we needed in the Northland to create jobs. My mining record has been strong in regards to mining, with my Buy American Steel Amendment, my PolyMet stance. I was working on PolyMet before I was even sworn in, and the meetings that we have had with PolyMet and all the leading parties, interested party, Native American community as well, making sure that we're all working together as a coalition and moving this mining project forward. Because, quite frankly, we need jobs. And we need good paying jobs. And that's what PolyMet is all about. And when we can protect our environment at the same time, we can do both. I am convinced of it, that we can do both. I've sat in these meetings. I've talked to PolyMet. I have talked to people that are concerned about our environment at the same time. We can do both, and at the same time create 300 to 350 full-time jobs, in addition to almost double that in direct ancillary jobs, not to mention the thousands of construction jobs that will be built for this mine. My vision of the 8th District of Minnesota is one that are people moving into the 8th District for the opportunities that are going to be presented in the 8th, using our natural resources wisely. And then I'm just getting started. Then we're going to shift up north, and we're going to go to Ely, and we're going to go to the Twin Metals Project as well, 2,000 to 2,500 full-time jobs.
Rick Nolan?
Well, I've met with the people at PolyMet and Twin Metals as well, and they don't have a problem with the regulations. In fact, they came up with a very nice discovery in reverse osmosis to help advance that project coming up here. But Chip, I tell you what, I know a little bit about the logging business. My family owns a sawmill and a pallet factory. We've been in that business. We know a little bit about snowmobiling. My wife and I have a state trail system going through our farm up in northern Minnesota. And with regard to the Boundary Waters Wilderness Canoe Area, you know, I am, quite frankly, a proud sponsor of that legislation. It's one of the 10 best destination-oriented vacations in the entire world. People fly in from all over America, all over the world, to take advantage of that great experience. We live up here in the Northwoods because we love our great outdoors, and we're going to advance with mining and forestry and tourism, but we're going to not do it in any way that damages our great outdoors.
Chip Cravaack.
Again, Congressman, you sided with Twin City environmentalists rather than promoting jobs up in the 8th District of Minnesota.
We're talking about
people. We're talking about jobs. We're talking about growth. We're talking about people up in the 8th District of Minnesota being gainfully employed with good-paying jobs. We can do both. We can protect our environment, and at the same time, we can use our natural resources wisely. And this is what I've been promoting from day one after being elected. That was one of my first things to do, was to reach out to Parliament and say, how can I work with you in protecting the environment? One of the things that just happened recently, and because of a lot of hard work and effort by the Parliament folks, they were able to reach the 10 parts per million sulfide standard. They have met every one of the requirements, and now all the studies are done. Now they're moving forward on the paperwork through the bureaucracies. We have great opportunity in the 8th District using our natural resources, and at the same time get fantastic, high-paying, good-paying jobs.
Used to hear a lot about diversification, buzzword of the 80s. The theory was the Iron Range 8th District had become too dependent upon mining, iron mining, needed to move to different areas of economic development. What are the best alternatives to mining in the 8th District? Chip Cravaack.
Well, I've always said that the 8th District is timber, taconite, and tourism, and hopefully we'll have precious metals soon. If we were a country, we would probably be one of the most richest countries in the world with our natural resources, with our timber industry, also our taconite, iron ore, which is going great guns right now. And speaking of environmentalists trying to shut us down once again, we have the EPA out of Washington, D.C., overriding Minnesota pollution control regarding that haze issue, where states are actually supposed to take the lead. And implementing, where there was a nice plan by the Minnesota Pollution Control, meeting with the mines and saying that we have a program to meet the haze standard. Federal government comes in and says, no, you are going, instead of this program that you guys worked out together, we're going to go ahead and we're going to shut you guys down in 18 months unless you meet certain haze requirements, where the states are actually supposed to take the lead. I've got news for you. Some of the taconite mines may not be able to meet that standard. That's jobs. That's jobs. That's environmentalists coming in and telling us what we can and we can't do in the 8th District of Minnesota, especially with the 8th District. In regards to mining, mining is essential. A person that's on your staff, Jeff Anderson, said that some of the proposals that you have made, making the Mining Institute, for example, at the cost of the taxpayer, $250 million a year, that keeps mining under a continual microscope instead of moving forward and progressing. Jeff Anderson said that this is pie in the sky. In addition to that, he said that he actually supports my positions on mining. These are using our natural resources in a wise manner, using timber, taconite, and tourism, and precious metals. We can do all four of those and have people moving into the 8th District for job opportunities. And that's the future that I see for the 8th District of Minnesota.
Rick Nolan?
Well, glad you bring up Jeff Anderson. I believe he's in the audience here today, and he's supporting my campaign, not yours. And with regard to the Mining Institute, no less than the University Land Grant System, University School of Engineering in Duluth, the National Mining Association have all endorsed the need for a Mining Research and Development Institute. You weren't here at the time because you didn't live here, but taconite was a process that was developed by the University of Minnesota. We have a mining project just north of our sawmill of manganese, and we're having some problems developing a technology to exploit that because of the hard rock is harder than what we thought. This is the kind of basic research that enables business to go forward in a way that accesses and takes advantage of the opportunity and protects the environment. So don't belittle that kind of a fundamental basic research. But in answer to your primary question, there are great opportunities opportunities in tourism, and it's based on our great outdoors. There's great opportunities in forestry with a sustainable forestry program. There's great opportunities in agriculture. We got a lot of farmers in this district, Chip, in the western and southern parts of it. And by the way, we have a fair number of suburban people who you speak derisively about here. But there's also a great opportunity for light manufacturing throughout the district, and that's dependent upon a good infrastructure. And why you voted to put an end to essential air services for regional centers like Brainerd and Thief River Falls and Bemidji and Hibbing is beyond me. But, you know, you also came out against the new airport terminal in Duluth, the rail transportation between Duluth and the Twin Cities and the North Star line that would go up the western end. You voted against more opportunities to create jobs and improve our business climate up in the 8th District than any congressman who's ever served there.
Chip Cravaack.
I'm glad to see that Jeff is a paid staffer on the DFL side, so I understand that. And he's supporting you now. So, but in regards to that, I have been endorsed by the National Federation of Independent Businesses because I get it. Small businesses is the key of the 8th District of Minnesota. We are small towns. We have to make sure we get regulations off the backs of small businesses so they have the confidence to expand and create jobs. I've also had a proud recipient and honorary of the National Association of Manufacturers as well. Because of my positions on manufacturing and getting the job, we have the least manufacturing we've had since 1941. We can change that. We have to change it. In addition to the airports, I was the working chair of the EAS, Essential Air Service. We saved Essential Air Service because of the massive amount of increase in growth that has accumulated over the last year at the cost of the taxpayer dollars. We've had some airports that had $3,750 of subsidies per passenger for flight. That's egregious. And we've changed that.
Rick Nolan?
Well, Congressman, I know you introduced the legislation and voted for the legislation to do away with essential air services. Let me get this straight. Were you for it before you were against it? Were you against it before you were for it? Or how does that all work? The important thing here, Congressman, is that you have a strong incentive for business to invest when you have demand for product, and you have demand for product when you build a strong middle class and you create good jobs. That's the direction that we need to go in this country, and you don't do that by providing more tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires. They already have more money than any generation ever in the history of the world, and you build an economy by building a strong middle class, supporting working men and women, supporting unions. Without a good middle class, without unions, you don't have wages, you don't have a strong middle class, and you don't have an economy. That's how you create jobs. That's how you create opportunities.
All right, gentlemen, for the rest of the hour now, we're going to open it up to audience questions. And to make sure that we get to as many questions as possible, a little tighter time limit, please. Candidates, just 1 minute each for each of the questions. Timekeepers square on that? All right, here we go. First question comes from Bruce in Pine City, who wants to know, after the Aurora shooting earlier this summer, and I would parenthetically add the Minneapolis workplace shooting here a couple of weeks ago, do you think, do we need further restrictions on gun ownership? Rick Nolan, you're first.
My wife reminded me the other day that we've been married for 28 years. She's here in the audience, by the way. Hi, Mary. That the first birthday present I bought for her was a 20-gauge shotgun. The second present I bought for her was a 30-30 deer rifle with a scope on it. So if the question is, do I support Second Amendment and gun rights, the answer is yes. My wife and family and I, we never miss a fishing opener or a hunting opener, and I'm already arguing with my campaign staff because Saturday before the election, I'm going deer hunting. So, Mr. Mysteric, stop shaking your head. I've never missed a deer opener, and I'm not going to miss this one. I support Second Amendment rights.
Chip Cravaack?
Not one more law would have banned the tragedies that happened in Aurora and also in Minneapolis. One more law wouldn't have. But I tell you what would have. If there was another person in that audience that had a weapon that would have been able to protect themselves and the fellow audience members. Now, in talking about the NRA, Second Amendment rights aren't for going hunting. Second Amendment rights is have an armed citizenry. I've been endorsed by the NRA. I've gotten an A with the NRA. Congressman, you got an F because when you were in Congress, you wanted to ban handguns, regulate ammunition, and you've gone out publicly and said that you would reinstate the assault ban. I think what we're doing is we're taking guns away from law-abiding citizens and letting crooks who don't care about the laws have those weapons.
All right. Next question. Millions of dollars are being spent by outside groups on your behalf, mostly in the form of negative attack ads. Will you be beholden to these outside groups if you're elected or reelected? Chip Cravaack, you're first.
I think I have a pretty independent voting record. There's been a lot of cases where I have actually voted against my party with lots of pressure, one of which we talked about today is the Budget Control Act in regards to making sure that our troops had the amount of funds that they needed. I quite frankly had a deputy whip sticking his finger in my chest saying, "You got to vote this way," and I said, "This isn't what the people of the 8th District want." I voted against the party 3 times in regards to FEMA, making sure that Duluth got the funds that they needed during that terrible flood. I would back that as well. So I'm known as a pretty independent when it comes to voting. I vote the district. I vote regarding those 29 town halls and 17 town halls. You provide the input to me, and I take it to Washington.
All right. Rick Nolan?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I see you got money from the Koch brothers, and when they were closing down the Pacific Georgia plant up here in Duluth, which is going to close at the end of this month, I see the governor was up there, the mayor, all the local legislators, myself, fighting, trying to see if there wasn't something we could do to keep that plant open. I didn't see you anywhere around fighting for those working men and women up there who were losing their jobs. But when it came time to voting in the Congress, I see you voted to extend the tax benefits for multinational corporations like the Koch brothers to be incentivized to move their jobs and their manufacturing offshore. So, and similarly, I see you're getting an awful lot of money from Sheldon Adelson, the Las Vegas billionaire, who's in a similar situation to the Koch brothers. So I personally think we need to have federal funding for campaigns and elections. Take the evil, perverse effect that big money's having on this process.
What is your take on the unemployment rate among veterans and what steps should be taken to help deal with this issue? Rick Nolan, you're first.
Well, there again, Chip, I think one of the first votes you cast was to deny funding for helping homeless veterans who are sleeping under bridges and who'd had their lives shattered from being great patriots and serving this country. I think we should leave no stone unturned in providing housing, in health care, in job training, and jobs for the heroes, the men and women who have served our country. But in that same regard, I think it's time that we stop this nation building abroad and all these wars of choice. I'm for ending the war in Afghanistan now, not as soon as possible. For you and some of your friends, that can be 20, 30 years down the road from now. We need to use that money to help our veterans, to rebuild America, to get this country back on track, to restore the hope, restore the promise, restore the dream. And that's how we take care of our veterans.
Okay. Chip Cravaack?
I am a vet. 24 years. Served a retired Navy captain. I was a helicopter pilot. Unemployment among our veterans is a tragedy. Best thing you can do when he comes home, get him a job, get him employed. And that is the overarching that we're trying to do is create a better economy for our vets that are coming home. Congressman, again, you say you're concerned about veterans, but when you were in Congress missing votes, you missed the COLA, cost of living allowance for our veterans. You missed the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, making sure that our troops have what they need when they go and defend this great country. And in regards to the homeless vet, that is, sir, I'll help you fact check this because fact check went ahead and said that this was an absolute abomination and a lie. So, I'm for our veterans. I am a vet. My buddies are vets. We're going to take care of our veterans. The GOP budget actually gives more to our veterans than what the president requested. We take care of our veterans.
Carla says last year there was a vote to raise the debt ceiling so the country's credit rating wasn't downgraded. Under what circumstances would you support raising the debt ceiling again? Chip Cravaack.
Raising the debt ceiling, you have to have making sure that you have offsets. That's one of the chief components. Right now, we are $16 trillion in debt. We're spending money like there's no tomorrow. We're borrowing money from people that really don't like us that well. 46% of our debt is foreign-owned. 30% of that is owned by China. Congressman, when he was in office, raised the debt ceiling 10 times. And then in addition to that, he raised our debt 75%. We're spending money we don't have, and we're pushing it off to our children that are going to be indentured servants to foreign entities and foreign banks. We have to stop doing that. I voted against the Budget Control Act because it didn't place a plausible method of controlling our deficit spending. It's not that Washington taxes too little, it's that Washington spends way too much. Over the last couple years, we've increased spending by 29%. Has anybody got a 29% pay raise in here? No. We have to cut the spending. That is the issue.
Rick Nolan?
Well, raising the debt ceiling is not all about proposing more debt. When Ronald Reagan was president of the United States, he increased the national debt by 189%. The Obama administration, by contrast, has so far expanded it only a little over 40%. The debt ceiling is all about whether or not you're going to pay your bills. The priorities, the spending priorities in this federal government are not my priorities. They'd be dramatically different if I were the one in charge and could establish the priorities. But the fact is, a commitment has been made, and you have to pay your bills, Chip. There's nothing that can be more irresponsible in business and or in government to incur debt, to incur obligations, and then not be willing to stand up for them and pay the bills. To do otherwise would be to cause irreparable harm and damage to the full faith and credit of the government of the United States.
Okay.
In fact...
All right. Should public employees have the same collective bargaining rights as private sector employees? Rick Nolan.
Absolutely. If you follow the progress of America and the building of the middle class, it follows the success of the union movement here in this country. If we don't have good, strong collective bargaining rights, we don't have a strong middle class. And that, in many respects, is one of the key issues in what this contest is all about. The Koch brothers, who support you, Chip, and others, have launched a war on collective bargaining, on working men and women in this country. If we don't step up and stand by our working men and women and fight for their collective bargaining, fight for their pensions, fight for their health care, fight for the wages. And in that regard, I didn't see you up meeting with the steel workers when the companies were trying to do away with their pensions and their health care and their wages in the future. You might be for mining, Chip, but you're a company man. You're not a working man's guy.
Chip Cravaack. I
was in the union for 17 years. There's not too many Republicans or Democrats, I might add, in Congress that actually walked a picket line for real. First, I was 1 year in. I was a probationary pilot for Northwest Airlines, and I got laid off for 2 years. I've had gone through, unfortunately, our Northwest Airlines went through a terrible bankruptcy where I lost 10 years of seniority with a stroke of a pen. I actually ran all the picketing events during our strike in '98. From Tokyo to Amsterdam, I was in charge of the picketing. In addition to that, I know, I get it, my grandmother actually helped start the Seamstress Union in Cincinnati, Ohio. So I know about unions, and I have the proud endorsement of the 49ers, one of the very few Republicans actually to actually get an endorsement from a union. My voting record is 100% for Davis Bacon. So I am one of these, what's called a lunch pail Republican. I'm a pro-union Republican, and I have the track record to prove it.
We have an odd amount of time here, so I'm going to do something odd and ask you to take about 30 seconds just to comment on this, and then we'll get to closing statements, if that's okay. And the question from the audience, if elected, what will you do to end the partisan gridlock and move America forward? Chip Cravaack, you're first.
That's one of the most frustrating thing that people say, what's the thing most that you've learned in Congress? And I said, frustration. It has been extremely frustrating. on the House side, we have created a lot of bipartisan work. And when people say they're frustrated with Congress and there's gridlock, well, they're half right. Because in the House, we have passed quite a few bipartisan bills that have gone up to the Senate and unfortunately died. We have worked in a bicameral fashion for a transportation bill, an FAA bill, so we've had some successes.
Rick Nolan?
Chip, you've talked a lot about my record, and I want you to know that I was recognized by nationally syndicated columnists as one of the 19 of the 535 most respected members of the entire Congress. They cited integrity, someone who would do the right thing, not the political thing, and someone who was effective at getting things done. I always had a Republican Party partner in every legislative accomplishment that I worked on and achieved while I was in the Congress. I wouldn't be running if I didn't think I could do that again and make a difference.
Thanks, gentlemen. Before we go to closing statements, we would like to remind you that today's debate was made possible through the financial support of the Otto Bremer Foundation, the Prairie Island Indian Community, and the Target Corporation. I'd like to thank the Anoka Ramsey Community College Cambridge campus and the Minnesota State College Student Association for co-hosting this debate. Also, special thanks to the Uptake for live streaming today's debate and to Minnesota Public Radio for broadcasting the debate on the radio. Mary Underwood is the director of Debate Minnesota. And we'd also like to sincerely thank Mr. Will Hadland, who just passed away a few weeks ago. Will was the founder of Debate Minnesota, and through his hard work and dedication, he made and continues to make a great contribution to public life here in Minnesota. All right, time for 1-minute closing statements. Rick Nolan, you go first, please.
Well, we've heard all the rhetoric, seen the attack ads, and listened to the debate, and the choice could not be more clear. In going forward, in Congressman Cravaack, we have someone who believes in you build an economy from the top down, more tax breaks for billionaires and millionaires, and more tax incentives for them to move their manufacturing offshore. I believe there's a better course, and it involves making the rich step up and pay their fair share of taxes, stopping the nation building abroad and start rebuilding America, funding our schools, our hospitals, rebuilding America. Those are the choices that we have in this election. I don't believe they could be more clear. I respectfully ask all of you for your consideration and your vote on November 6th. Help me get this country back on track again.
That's Democrat Rick Nolan and Republican Chip Cravaack.
Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for being involved in a very important debate. I agree with the Congressman. We do have differences of opinions on how to get there, though I believe at the same time we truly believe what we want best for the 8th District of Minnesota, which I've had the privilege and the honor to serve. But we have a big difference of how we get there. I believe in unlocking the entrepreneurial genius of the American people, but at the same time giving them a break, making sure that all of us get a tax break, make sure that all of us have the opportunity to excel. You know, when my grandparents came here, literally on the boat, they had absolutely nothing. They came here for one reason, opportunity. And that's one of the most important things that I want to make sure that the next generations have is opportunity. And unfortunately, under the current administration, we are putting a lid on that light of opportunity. Thank you very much for being here today. I respectfully and humbly ask for your vote in the future. Thank you.
Well, that's Republican Chip Cravaack, and that wraps up our debate for today. You can applaud now. Candidates, thanks so much. Good luck. I'm Gary Eichten. Good afternoon, and thanks for coming out. Thanks for joining us today.